Welcome to the How to Tackle the Challenges of Hybrid Work webinar with FlexOS today. And to start off this little event, we would like to talk a little bit about FlexOS. FlexOS is a platform, and our one big mission is to help people or your company to bring people into the office with data-driven, personalized way to drive employee engagement and retention. So what does that mean exactly? So here are three main things that we can really help companies with hybrid work. First of all, is manage people and space. So employees are able to book desk space. HR team is able to set up guidelines. Second part, engage and reward employees. How can we actually get our employees into the office again and really get them connect and cultivate culture as a collective. And last but not least, data is always a big topic, and how can we utilize HR analytics in our companies these days? We can also help provide the data and insights to help your company measure, learn, and optimize. So let's take a look at how can we actually get employees motivated to get into the office. We have gamification system. So whenever an employee is back into the office, they can check in and enter a lottery to win prizes. So whenever they comply to whatever hybrid guidelines that or policy that they're assigned to, they will get a little nudge so that they're excited to be back in the office and then continue to do so. Employee engagement, we understand that yes, companies would love to help create an environment where employees are engaged, but it is not an easy task. So FlexOS can help with creating personalized, highly focused events for employees to attend and then get to know and hang out with like-minded people. We will actually help you to create the content itself and plan the events for your employees. This is a mock-up for the September event plan that we actually have in place with our current clients. The Moon Festival coming up in September. This is the overall theme that we have for our events for the upcoming month. How can we actually make the events helpful, meaningful, and exciting for the employees? Whenever we onboard anyone onto the platform, we actually do survey to make sure that we fully understand the skills, their interests, and what they want to learn or develop as they continue the journey with the company. So with this data, we can actually see the different pockets of interest that we can plan the events and activities around. And here's a little sneak peek into what it looks like in the platform when it comes to the space management feature. Here you can see that employees can look at the different desk clusters and meeting rooms, so they can see when they come into the office, which space can they book so that they can collaborate with the colleagues. The platform actually collects real-time data constantly. So data can be from, are the teams adhering to my hybrid policy? Are they coming into the office 3 times or 2 times a week as they have asked them? Or what kind of space are the employees interested in booking whenever they're in office? Is it a meeting room with 10 seats, or is it actually a booth with only 3 to 4 seats? And also events. Is this event relevant, helpful, meaningful for employees to attend? Should we continue doing such activities in the future? How else can we make the events relevant for the employees and motivate them to getting into the office and seeing their colleagues? So all these data is available in the platform for you. So that's a little sneak peek into FlexOS, what it does and how it can help companies set up a successful hybrid workplace and workforce. So if you're interested in learning even more about our product, please feel free to reach out, and we're here to help. But now let's get to know each other a little more about you. So we'll do a little polling for this session. I would like to ask you to maybe use your phone or on your computer to participate. Here's our first question. How would you describe your current role right now? Are you a HR practitioner at a company? Are you a consultant helping other businesses setting up hybrid work at their office? Are you a business owner dealing with a lot of challenges managing your hybrid workplace and workforce? Or you're just a very curious person, want to learn more about the future of work and where it's going? Okay, I can see here. Okay, the majority being in the HR practitioners bucket. A few business owners as well. Okay, that's good to see. Awesome. Cool. Okay, next question. What are some of the challenges that you're dealing with right now with hybrid work? Is it setting up a hybrid policy that you can help teams to adhere to? Or is it change management? Are you seeing resistance in regards to doing hybrid work? Or everything? Yeah, hybrid work is hard. And we definitely know that. So that's why we're here to provide some insights and guidance on how to successfully set it up for your teams and company. Yeah, I see quite a few, well, connection and community. That's a big challenge that people are seeing at the companies. Technology as well. Definitely an issue with people working kind of remotely, not in office, right? There's always a joke that, if there's no technology issue, then we're not doing remote or hybrid work the right way. Okay, this is very helpful to see where people are stuck at with hybrid work. And we don't have all the answers, but we will have some insights, some helpful resources that we can help you with. Awesome. Okay, so with that, I would like to hand it over to our speaker today, Daan from Rossum. He's been in the work of future of work, very prominent thought leader in the field, and very happy to have Daan here to talk us through how to overcome the challenges of hybrid work. Over to you, Daan.
So thanks for the intro. Thanks everyone for joining today. Hey, we did that poll just now because actually there are so many challenges in hybrid work. If I'm going to talk about all the challenges and how to solve them, we'll be here for another 500 years. So with that said, let's dig into the content. So look, we just went through this. So let me kind of skip forward and really start with the acknowledgement that hybrid is a spectrum, right? It would be a very difficult conversation for us to say, here's what hybrid is, here's how to do it, because actually there is a huge spectrum of what hybrid can be. And that can be, as you see on this chart, from all the way to the left, it can be that people are pretty much remote first. So actually you almost have no physical office. Most people are kind of working remotely. Every now and then, hopefully you still get them together, all the way down to you're pretty much in the office like 4 or 5 days a week. Right. And then there's the in-between, sort of the messy middle, as they would say, which is that sort of, okay, we give people more freedom, we give people more flexibility. Now they're coming in 2 to 3 days per week. Man, how many headaches is that presenting to us? So hybrid is a huge spectrum. So let's keep that in mind while we go through this content. That being said, there's still enough of a driver for companies to embrace hybrid work. In fact, McKinsey just released a study last year where they said that 90% of companies are predicted to move to some form of hybrid work. Again, hybrid is a spectrum, but some form of hybrid work within the next couple of years. And we're seeing that in the region, right? We're seeing really large companies, but also small startups in different industries moving to this new way of working. And obviously we're all here together on the call to kind of figure out how to do that in the best way possible, right? So We see it from big banks like HSBC. We see it from HR related companies like Manpower Group. And we see it from even real estate companies like Savills, who just completely rebuilt their office in Saigon to reflect this new style of working. And obviously there's the usual suspects who are doing it remotely, including Apple, who just announced that people had to come back to the office 3 days per week. And now there's a huge petition going around of Apple employees saying, I don't want to go to that $5 billion headquarter. But anywho, hybrid is a thing. And it makes sense, right? There's a lot of benefits of hybrid if you've kind of followed along with what we've been publishing, if you've kind of been following hybrid as a topic generally, you can see that there's a huge benefit in doing hybrid work. The first one, I'll get the boring one out of the way, and then I'll get to the fun one because I know that there's a lot of HR practitioners on the call. So let's start with the boring one, which is that if you go hybrid, you obviously don't need that much office space. And if, you know, like most companies, you're in an office tower where you're paying somewhere between $30 and $100 per square meter, that's pretty attractive, right? So a lot of studies have shown this, but again, it makes intuitive sense that if you can reduce your space, you can reduce your cost, right? So you can save on the rent itself, but also on all the operational costs. I know air conditioning is not free either. So that's one, right? The other one, for all the HR practitioners, company owners on the call, it also makes the company a lot more attractive, right? So I saw Vanessa is on the call from Ogilvy, has already executed this. Sarah is on the call from Grasshopper, has already executed this, right? It is more attractive for people to work in a hybrid environment because we've all learned during the pandemic that it's pretty nice to be working from home at least some days of the week. So you see that, you know, most Singaporeans now already say that, you know, I really prefer a hybrid way of working. In fact, I went to a conference in Singapore last week where the head of HR for UOB, another big bank there, said that 2 out of 5 of his team members said that they would quit their job if they don't give them some kind of flexibility. And even in Vietnam, you see that only 9% of Gen Zers, those kind of like young people that we're all trying to get into our workforce so that hopefully we can feel a bit younger, that they require that new way of working, right? Where only 9% says, yeah, I'm happy to come into the office 5 days a week, right? So obviously, if we make it more attractive for people to join our company, to be in our company, we'll have less people quitting. And that obviously has been proven time and time again to save a lot of money. And anyone who's seen someone go, especially a very valuable team member, we all know the pain of then suddenly having to recruit someone new, because we all forget about succession planning when we have other things to do, to recruit someone new, to train that person up, and to hopefully get them to be fully effective 3 months after joining. So that's a huge amount of money that you're throwing away, right? So in this ever ongoing game of attracting the best talent, engaging people, and retaining people, hybrid work can play a big service. That's all the good stuff. Okay, I mean, we had to go through the good stuff before we get to the bad stuff, right? Obviously, there are also challenges. And we hear this time and time again from companies who have gone hybrid. We are obviously ourselves a hybrid company. So we're feeling that pain almost on a daily basis. And, you know, we can look at it from the company's perspective, which there are plenty of pains, which we can go through in a little bit, but also just from the employee perspective, right? The employee doesn't want to work from home 5 days a week. I mean, most people, even hardcore introverts like me, don't want to sit at home 5 days a week and never see anyone. We don't want to go 100% recluse. But when they're thinking about, well, when should I go to the office and why, that's still a really big question. So Microsoft did some research earlier this year, and that showed that that's typically for employees the big question: when and why to come into the office, because they can work anywhere. So, you know, again, because we are in this space of hybrid work and in new working models and future of work, the only thing we basically do, Charlotte and I, is like trying to get as much information about this kind of new trend, this new move, this new model as possible. So any piece of research out there, we've read it. Any conference going on, we've been there. Anyone who has done hybrid work, we've spoken to them. And so based on all that, we just put together this new white paper, which is called the Hybrid Work in Southeast Asia Starter Kit. Sorry, I couldn't think of a shorter title. Feel free to leave it in the comments if you have one. But this is basically kind of like bringing everything together in terms of what are we hearing from companies that are the real challenges, and then how to solve them. And so it's kind of a mix of insights and practical tips. and some case studies as well. So we'll make sure if you haven't downloaded it yet, that we'll send you a copy following the webinar. But to give you a teaser, there's still obviously more content in that white paper, but to give you a teaser, these are the 12 key trends that came out and you've just voted on them, right? So anything from, how do I measure hybrid guideline adherence all the way down to things like DEIB. We should not forget about the belonging part, ensuring mental and physical well-being, things like how do you learn and grow in a company when you can't kind of like learn by looking over the shoulder and shadowing someone, right? All these things become key challenges. So again, we did the poll because I like to be interactive, because I like to give you the content that you're actually looking for. And I wrote down 3 key elements that came out from what you just shared. Number 1 is designing the hybrid office, right? So how do we create an office that actually works for hybrid work? Because when people can work from home, when they then come into the office, they may have different requirements, right? Number 2 is around connections and community. So how do I make sure that there's still a sense of, again, belonging and community of the people who work in my company? And then the final one, well-being. So I'm going to go through those 3. Again, there's much more content. You'll see all the slides are here. So we can always jump back into Q&A, but I'll just give you a little bit of a preview of what's in the paper and what we can do from these 3 perspectives. So the first one is about designing and managing a hybrid office, right? So the did you know here that with hybrid work, you can save up to 50%? You already know because I just told you. So now really the question is, okay, so if I can save that much money, I mean, that sounds amazing because we all have CFOs in our lives who love to save money. Okay, so then what do we do, right? The first one really is that, again, the office itself will look very different when we move towards a hybrid working model. Now, hybrid work, again, it's not only a spectrum, it's also something that's very new. So it's very difficult for companies to already really know what that office of the future should look like. And so you see that a lot of chief people officers and other people involved in this sort of conundrum about what should the office look like kind of take the stance of it's a little bit of like, let's try and learn and optimize. So while it may start with updating your office for the hybrid work and making sure that all the things that people want to come to the office for are there really is also something around measuring and learning. As Charlotte just said, data becomes more and more important for us. So what are some of the spaces that you need when we're talking about updating your office for hybrid work? Number 1 is I want space to just connect, right? If I walk into an office and it's just a sea of desks, then I may as well stay at home and do my Zoom calls there, right? I need space to sit down with people, have informal coffee chats, connect with people, and kind of just be there before I get into the work mode, right? So you see a lot of more modern offices and offices that are designed for hybrid work, like the Savills office that I mentioned before. They have a lot more social space. So that's number 1. Number 2 is that you want to make sure that there's enough space to formally meet and collaborate, right? So we want to make sure that there's space in that office for us to sit together as a small group or as a bigger group to collaborate, right? Because as Charlotte mentioned earlier, it's not that we cannot collaborate online, and maybe it's a skill that we'll learn, and in a couple of years, we will seamlessly do a 40-person brainstorm through Zoom. But right now, it's still really helpful to get people together. So the spaces need to reflect that. There needs to be space for groups of people to get together, not just in a social setting, but also in an environment where I can collaborate, brainstorm, work on client projects, etc. And so that means whiteboards, that means good acoustics and all that. The third one is that there needs to be focus space. So this is something that people sometimes forget about, that, oh, if the office is all about coming together and seeing each other again after we've been at home for 2 days, and then it's fun and social, that doesn't mean that on that 8 or 10-hour workday, depending on the company we're talking about, that people just want to sit in a social space like they're sitting in a cafe all day. At some point, they also want to be able to kind of step aside and for maybe 1 or 2 hours do focused work. So in terms of the zoning in the office of focused work area is still really important. And then the last one is really all around balance. So how do I make sure that there are spaces for well-being, that I can take a mental well-being break, or maybe a nap, like we see in some countries in Southeast Asia, or maybe things like there's a yoga studio, or there is a meditation space, right? these things become more important as the office again becomes this hub for everything you cannot do at home. So that's kind of like the physical office. We've done a webinar before where we went into a lot of detail around the types of spaces. We can send you the link and you can go through all of that as you're planning your next office. We've also worked with companies like AIA to help them redesign their office for the hybrid age. So we're happy to support as well or share any information you may need. Now, number two is that there's going to be a challenge, right? So we just said that it's really great that you can reduce 50% of your operating cost and your rental costs because you now have a smaller office, because most people work from home 2 or 3 days a week. Okay, but now we run into the new issue, which is that what if all those people come to the office on Tuesday and you have 100 workstations plus some cafe seating plus 2 meeting rooms, but you have 150 people? Normally it wouldn't really matter because if everyone's working from home, or even if 50% is working from home, you have more than enough space, right? But what if everyone comes to the office and there's not enough space for people to sit? Extremely stressful for workplace managers, for the HR admins, for the office managers who have to now deal with people saying, you told me I should come to the office more, but when I show up there, there's no space for me to work, right? So making sure that there are clear rules of how to reserve office space and how to book that office space and how to secure that office space. So let's say I book a room or I book a desk. Do I need to show up within 50 minutes of the booking? Otherwise it gets released, for example, because otherwise you get things like ghost bookings where the desk or the room is technically booked, but there's no one there, whereas someone else is sitting there not having that facility. So that's really important, which obviously is something that our platform can help with, as Charlotte said earlier. And then finally, all of that booking and all of that reservations and all of that scheduling, and we can even facilitate check-ins to the office, like use a QR code to scan for people to acknowledge that they're in the office. All of that data now allows you to make decisions to, again, optimize that office over time. So even if we have that office beautifully designed for the hybrid work, it doesn't mean that what the office requirement today is still relevant 2 years from now or 3 years from now, or even from month to month. Do we see signals that the office is overflowing on Wednesday, but it's completely empty on Friday? So once we have the data, we can make decisions around, again, the policies of when and where to work, in terms of like the amount of workspace have, even the type of workspaces that we have in the office, we can optimize it for that. So getting that data in and then using that data, as I know, we always talk about HR should be more data driven. Okay, now we actually have the opportunity to collect data and to make sure it works. So that's a little bit about the physical office, which both needs to be a place people love to come to. It needs to be designed to fulfill all the requirements that someone may have when they come to the office. And it then needs to be measured and optimized over time. So as I then sum up those points, you can see why we cannot go through all 12 trends, because again, we will be here until tomorrow, and it will be dark, not just from the rain outside, but because the sun has set. So that was topic number one that you guys said is really of interest. The second one is around connection and community. So let me just skip forward here and share the hard truth, which is that when people come to the office less, when people show up to the workplace less, culture suffers. We did a roundtable in Singapore with CHROs and business owners a month ago, and that's exactly what we heard. Someone raised their hand and said, everyone thought the issue was going to be around productivity, but actually, since we have embraced hybrid work, productivity went up, but culture went down, right? I think we've all kind of seen that the days that we work from home, your office basically starts right on the first minute when you get out of bed. You're in your office, therefore your workday starts. So you end up spending a lot of time, but that sense of connection, that sense of community, that sense of belonging to the company really suffers. And so there's some Microsoft research that basically shows that for remote teams, for example, who never come into the office, they immediately report a big drop in the sense of having great relationships with colleagues. So this is really a big challenge, right? Because if we don't feel connected to our colleagues, if we don't feel connected to our company, it's really, really hard to have that sense of I belong here, I want to stay here, right? Again, we're all about engaging employees and retaining employees. So there are ways to solve it, which from our background, like we have some experience in. And so I'm happy to share kind of how we've approached it and how we also advise some of our customers to approach it. And that really starts with not focusing so much as we typically tend to do on all of our employees as one big community. Because as you've seen with any type of event you organize, or anytime you bring people together, if you do one thing for everyone, it basically fits no one, right? Because it means that it's kind of like, no one can take offense, but also no one can delight in it, because it's just like one big activity, which is fine for your yearly team building, your yearly offsite, maybe your yearly trip outside of the country if you're that lucky, but definitely not for sort of ongoing engagement. So if we want to foster a sense of connection between employees and between employees and the company, a sense of community, a sense of belonging, we have to focus on breaking down that large community of all your, let's say, 300-400 employees, and break it down into smaller communities. And sometimes people can be in multiple communities. If you're a real nerd like me and you've researched holacracy, the management model that Zeppos introduced, Tony Hsiu introduced, you know that people can be in different sort of circles, right? You can be both in the working parents circle, and you can be in the anime fan circle, and you can be in the well-being circle. But the truth is that you need to find out what those different circles are within your team, so that you then can create content, events, and activities that are tailored to those smaller circles. Again, if you try to put something together for everyone, again, it's fine for your big, Lunar New Year, your CNY event, your Mid-Autumn event. Get everyone together, merry, very fun. But when you want to meaningfully engage people, as I'm sure as an individual, you want to engage in ways that are connected to what you're interested in, right? So that's what Charlotte talked about before. You want to connect with like-minded people. You want to have content, events, and activities that are tailored to your needs. So once you have that data, once you have sort of the insight into what are all those small communities within my company, you can then take that data and turn that into content, events, and activities, right? And you don't know before you do the survey, before you collect the data, you don't know what those circles are. It may just be that in your company, you have a huge community of topic X, whereas another company, most people are interested in this, right? So it really is very specific to each company. Therefore, collecting the data is really important. So then you can create content, events, and activities from that. And again, if you measure not only what do people attend, but also what do people view but not attend, or register but not attend, but also what is the feedback they give on each one of those activities, you can learn and optimize over time. You can get better and better at your employee engagement. And then let's not forget about the small stuff that is really individual, right? Which is stuff like birthdays and work anniversaries, right? We all know that this is important, but sometimes it kind of slips through the cracks, and we leave it, for example, to the middle manager or to the line manager, and then the line manager forgets or never gets a prompt that employee XYZ has been here for 2 years, or next week is this person's birthday. Make sure that all those things get celebrated. In fact, we went to a conference in Singapore, as I mentioned last week, and Coca-Cola said that this is actually one of the 3 reasons that people still come to the office at Coca-Cola, is to celebrate, right? And that could be individual milestones, it could be team milestones, company milestones, but celebrating is a great reason to get people together. So we believe this is really important. And I sort of highlighted a quote here from a good friend of mine, Andy, who is a EX person at HubSpot in Singapore, who talks basically about the need to create that content. And if you follow his page or his LinkedIn, you can see a lot of really great ideas of what kind of lunches they organize, and virtual events and in-person events. And it's always tailored to what people are interested in, which makes you feel like the company is personalizing the workplace experience for you. And then the final one, and this does me a world of good to see that people are interested in this, is well-being. And that's really, really nice to see, again, that sort of people are worried about this. And maybe it's because we all suffer, because again, who are the people that suffer the most in the workplace? It's always the HR people, because we have to take on all the work and all the issues of other people. But yeah, mental well-being, even physical well-being, is a challenge in hybrid work. And it really comes back to what we just talked about, right? We used to have really healthy boundaries. Remember that word, boundaries? We used to have really healthy boundaries between work life and home life, right? I would pack up my bag at the end of the day. I would wave goodbye to all my colleagues. I would maybe say, see you tomorrow or see you on Monday. And then I would take a bike or car or train back to home, and then I was home. And then maybe there was still some work at home, but there was a commute time. There was a very clear geographical break between the place where I work and the place where I live. And again, now all of that is gone. So we have this really big challenge now that a lot of people, and this was a poll in a newspaper from a few months ago, a lot of people are now saying, I feel that my workload has increased and my mental well-being has decreased since I moved to hybrid work. And the way to solve that, and I think that's really a key one that, again, a lot of this goes back to sort of like people management and HR basics. But a key one is basically set clear expectations. It's really easy to sort of misread situations when we focus on, attendance or performance. We sort of may think about, okay, like I haven't seen that person in a while. I haven't seen them in a meeting for a while. I don't see many messages from them on Slack or on Teams. Does that mean that they're not working? I start getting kind of like worried or skeptical. And, if we have that sort of bias towards distrust, then it becomes very difficult, right? To kind of still feel that people are doing a good job. So acting from trust as the basics and setting clear expectations with our colleagues to say that, hey, we would like you to at least answer within an hour if you get an email or if you get a call. And these may seem really sort of like, oh, that sounds like we're sort of telling people how to live their lives. But it's actually really helpful to make sure people just know what is good and not good. Otherwise, you also get into issues like a big term from last year, toxic productivity, right? You feel like you always need to be working, you always need to be sending messages, or else your boss would think that you're not doing anything, right? So just setting clear expectations in terms of work time, work hours, response times, and just saying, hey, it's totally fine if you need to step out and pick up your kid from school. It doesn't matter because that's all part of kind of like our new agreement of how we work together. So setting clear expectations and setting it in a hybrid policy or hybrid guideline is really helpful. And if you haven't crafted your hybrid guideline, we have a great template you can use. The second one is also really building in moments of downtime. So making sure that, we visited, for example, Property Guru last week in Singapore. They said, every Wednesday afternoon, the calendar is blocked. No one can book meetings. No one can make sort of like a claim on your time. That allows you to have some downtime. Manpower also in Singapore, they introduced this concept of right to disconnect, literally stating that it's okay not to be online. DBS does Focus Friday. So again, there's a lot of different ways to allow people to have that downtime. And then the final one is this idea of work-life harmony, which I like a lot better than work-life balance or work-life integration. This idea of like the two things are more connected than ever, but let's find a way to let that live in harmony and really have an open conversation with what do employees want in terms of balancing the two or putting the two in harmony. And there's a really interesting New York Times speech that you may want to look at. So again, a lot of this really is about what do we expect from the employee? What does the employee expect from us? And how can we just say it's okay to not always be working? And how do we set healthy boundaries? And again, nothing gets people stressed out more than, again, us as leaders sending emails late at night or messages on a weekend, right? Because that then triggers other people to respond and whole email chains and whole Slack channels to explode. So, we start and then we model it to everyone else, but setting those ground rules, writing a really clear hybrid policy, how do we engage with each other is really important for that mental and physical well-being. So those are 3 topics that we highlighted based on what you told us that you're interested in. These are all the 12 key challenges. Happy to jump into either of them, but also happy to do a quick Q&A and just kind of hear what your challenges are. And of course, thank you for listening to all that. And then, yeah, let's move into maybe any question answers that we have.
Well, thank you for that, Daan. Very helpful take on the 3 challenges that we see that our audience here is interested in. So now is the Q&A session. If you have any questions for Daan to answer, please put it in the Q&A or the chat box. I see that Vanessa already have a question for you right here, so I'll read it out. What is the best practice applied by industries or companies who have enough desks in the office, but the habit of employees is still to sit together with their own team, hence not willing to sit in a nearby empty desk? How would you address this? That's definitely a tough question.
Okay, I'll jump in on that one. And I knew when I saw that Vanessa joined, Vanessa, Chief People Officer at Ogilvy, I knew that there would be a good question coming at the end. So I'm very happy. Thank you, Vanessa, for asking that. Yeah, so this is obviously a big challenge, which is that we're saying that, and I'll kind of break it in two pieces, right? We're kind of saying that, hey, we have this new working model, we've designed this beautiful new hybrid office, and then everyone comes in on the first day, and maybe it starts with leaving a copy cup on the desk, and then maybe they leave their paperwork on the desk, and then maybe they put their favorite hot sauce into the cabinet, and all of a sudden someone has claimed that desk, right? And then their colleague sits next to them, and then the finance team says like, hey, if those two people are claiming their desk, I told you before you did this redesign, we need our own space because we need to file paperwork and we need to sit together, and we need more, it's confidential, et cetera, et cetera. So again, the starting point really is setting clear expectations of how you want this office to be used. And again, if you do it in a way that goes against what the employee wants, then you're going to be in a world of trouble anyway, right? So if you're going to kind of force down a new way of working that doesn't have any benefit for the employee, you're going to have a very hard time, or whoever is the workplace experience manager is going to have a very tough time fielding all these issues and questions and challenges and complaints. So that's going to be really hard, right? Why would we be against, for example, people of certain teams sitting together? Wouldn't we want, when people come into the office, that those people sit together so that they collaborate really well? For example, last week, I spoke to someone from ByteDance, the parent company of TikTok, which is where I spend way too much of my time. And that's how they do it. They basically have 5 floors of a huge office building, but they actually have zones of teams where, those teams also have to use some like desk booking app. Basically, you can only book within your team zone because they want teams to sit together, because when you're finally in the office together, they want you to sit next to people that you can collaborate with. Again, the opposite, if for your company, in your case, you actually really want to promote, cross-pollination, you really want people not to sit together, or you want people not to claim their desk and just end up having, a finance area and an HR area. If that comes from a user requirement, if that comes from an employee requirement, then that is something you can write into your hybrid guideline, into your office guideline, and then also reflect that in sort of the booking system, right? So if you have a booking system, you can then say that desks are assigned at random, and you have to sit at that specific desk number. It's totally possible. Again, like I said, I think for most companies, they actually like to promote collaboration. So I haven't really heard of cases where they try to force people to sit away from each other. But again, if that's something that you want to enable, and you feel like, again, there's a platform for that, there's a willingness or an excitement for employees to, sit next to a random person, then you can definitely do that. Chris, Chris, I see your question. Can I get a copy of the New York Times article, Chris? As soon as we hang up, I'm talking like we are on a telephone. As soon as the webinar ends, I'll send you a link to the New York Times article. Very interesting. I think, again, like everyone is very challenged by this idea of work, life. How does it integrate? How does it balance? How does it harmonize? So I will send you that. I will send you that article right after the webinar. Okay, I see Daan is announcing that a question is coming, so I'll wait for that question to come in. Tao, how do you deal with underperforming junior employees together with hybrid work model? Yeah, so Tao, this is a very sort of common problem. And it's not a problem, obviously, that's specific to hybrid work, right? You have always in companies people that are extremely motivated and excited to be participating in the company. And then there are people who are not so excited. And, usually those are the people that eventually, if you cannot find a way to put them in a performance program, if you cannot find a way to kind of change that, that you probably want to move out. So how do you deal with that specifically in hybrid work? Besides all the typical principles, I think the first thing is really trying to understand, well, how would I even know that someone is underperforming, right? Because again, if we're used to a 5 days in the week office model, then, if I walk past someone and they're on Facebook or on TikTok or something like that, or they're running their own business on the side, or they're doing something non-work related, then I would see it immediately, right? Or if someone like just always shows up late in meetings, or if people are never submitting their work on time, like all these things are really easy to spot very early on when you're in an office together. Now, when you're in hybrid work, it may be the case that, as we heard from one of our clients, that you have a big team meeting, and then a week later you have another big team meeting, and it turns out that someone didn't really progress during the entire week on the work that was supposed to be done. Or maybe in a slightly nicer version of this, they didn't understand what the boss asked them to do or what the manager asked them to do, and therefore they went on the wrong path, right? So because there aren't really enough check-in moments, you then basically get to a week later when you realize, okay, it didn't work. Or maybe in an underperforming employee, if you haven't set up clear KPIs, deliverables, OKR model, then that's going to be an issue. So we just did a session last Friday for all FlexOS clients around managing on outputs, so goal-oriented leadership, which was, I think, very helpful for people, because this is the question they're trying to answer, right? If I cannot manage based on attendance, if I cannot manage based on how often do I see people, and therefore do I get a sense of if they're productive or not, or if they're doing well or not, then I need other methods, right? So one way is basically to embrace kind of like an OKR model, or at least establish very clear expected outputs, deadlines, submits, check-ins, etc. Another one is to even know if people are coming in, right? So actually, when we started building this platform, we've been doing for years now, as Charlotte just showed, the content, the events, the activities, making sure it's exciting for people to come into the office. When we started building the tech side of it, the first request that came in was basically, well, I've now set this hybrid guideline. I'm asking people to come in 2 days per week, but how do I really know that they actually came in? Because not that I'm mistrusting, but if I want to sort of spot warning signs of employees not engaging or not doing so well, right? If we all come in a hybrid manner, maybe I choose Monday, Tuesday to come to work, and you choose Thursday, Friday, I could get the false sense that you're never in the office. Or maybe we're both in the office on Monday and I'm like, oh my God, like she's doing so well. She's always there when I'm there, but turns out you don't come in any of the other days. So again, that's why we early on build this system of, there's a QR code in your office, you scan the code, then we know that you're there. And that then gives a dashboard for a manager or for an HR operator or for leadership to see, based on an individual level, based on a team level, and based on a company level, are people actually coming in when we're asking them? So that's basically how we can sort of spot really early on, are there issues with engagement? Are there certain employees that are not doing well? So I hope that answers the question. Kay asked, how do we draw the lines between flexibility and setting the rules and regulations on hybrid working? I imagine the creation of hybrid work is to allow employees more flexibility and autonomy over their time and task working style. However, from a management perspective, we also need a system to organize that flexibility, or else chaos ensues. Okay, well, that is definitely very true. And I think this is, if you're really lucky, then hybrid work hopefully is organized chaos, but it's going to be a bit chaotic anyway, because we've spoken to, again, the highest people in HR in the largest companies in the region, and they're all saying we're trying to figure it out, right? So there is going to be some chaos anyway. There's no way about it. The first step really is, and again, the white paper goes into a bit more detail on this. The first step really is, we need to set clear expectations of when and where to work, and then how to work, right? So those are basically your hybrid guidelines. If you want to say it in a not so friendly way, it's your hybrid policy. And these things are incredibly important. And I'll tell you why. And there's two reasons. One, is because an employee needs clarity. Nothing is worse for an employee, as we always know from HR best practices, nothing is worse for an employee to not know what's expected. Again, it impacts our well-being. We may get stressed out. We may feel kind of anxious that, hey, should I be working? Should I be sending more messages, right? We need to understand what's expected. If the company says very clearly, I just need you to be here 2 days per week, then I don't feel bad for spending a third day at home, right? So I think that's very important for the employee and also for the company, because if we don't set very clear expectations, especially in larger companies, then we're going to have all kinds of miscommunications where one manager says, you know what, like, why didn't you join that meeting in person? Because isn't it obvious we should be in person? Why did you join online? Or, you know, why did you not reply when I sent you that email or that message, right? If you set very clear expectations captured in a great hybrid guideline, it's all clear and it's a lot less chaotic. So that's really, and there's a lot of questions that need to be answered. And I can just tell you from, again, from our very small example, our small experience, it took us a few months to write this guideline because there were so many things we had never thought about. There were so many questions we never have thought about to answer. And again, we are a small 20-person company, right? So it should be easy for us. Imagine doing this for a large company. But setting those guidelines is really, really important. So we'll make sure we send you the link, or we'll send you the document which asks you all those questions, and that should be a really great starting point. And again, very happy to help and share examples of how other companies have done it. Okay, and then from Daan. So what can we do to improve the discipline of employees when they are working from home? Because this factor relates directly to the productivity of organization. Again, I don't want to speak in too much of a general term because it is different for everyone, right? I don't want to say this and this is the case because it is different for everyone. In terms of discipline of the employees, actually the research shows, and most people would agree, that productivity actually goes up when you do hybrid work, because again, on those days that you're working from home, you save so much time on commute, and I would say time and energy and money on your commute of coming into the office, that you actually have more bandwidth to do work, and therefore you can be very productive on those days. Now, discipline, and maybe to say it in a friendlier way, because I'm the employee centricity advocate, motivation is going to be an issue. In fact, when we ran the study about Gen Z and the workplace, the number one thing that Gen Z said why they don't like working from home at times is the lack of motivation, the lack of accountability, right? And so that's why we don't go to a fully remote model where everyone just works from home all the time and where we have to manage people, you know, with daily check-ins or weekly check-ins, right? We still need people to get together, to be in the work mood, and to basically sit around a table and all get work done, right? And I would say that if there really are big issues around discipline for those employees at home, again, is that a work from home issue? Is that a hybrid work issue? Or is there generally an issue with employees either not having clarity about what's expected, not knowing what their expected deliverables and outputs are, or generally just not being engaged and excited to work for this company? Because if you would give someone a very clear workload and very clear deadlines, and it's work that they love to do because their purpose is aligned with the company's purpose and their sense of belonging is there, and they want to do that kind of work, there should be no issue, right? So I think it comes down to those three things. Again, there's a lot of research into this. I'm happy to share it in more detail, but I know that we're running a bit short on time. So I hope that's helpful. And then we'll go back to Chris. So Chris said, I get the impression that many of the solutions and services discussed are aimed for medium, large-sized companies. How about a company of, let's say, 25 people? Well, Chris, the beauty is that I have a company of 20 people. So I know exactly that while these challenges are being reported by the chief people officers of this world and are basically spread all over the media and all over the research in terms of like, what are those challenges of hybrid work? They 100% apply to small companies, which therefore all the solutions also apply to companies of, let's say 20, 25 people, right? Up to like 50, maybe 100 people. So some of the companies we work with, they literally have 25 people, but they do exactly the same thing. They write very clear guidelines on what are we expecting from you as an employee and what can you expect from us. They use a system like ours. Obviously, our customers use our system and we use our system, but anyone can choose the platform that they feel most comfortable with. But they use a platform like ours to then set what have we agreed with the employee in terms of how often do they come to the office, to then let them check into the office and therefore have data on how often do they come to the office and is that in line with the guideline. And use that platform to also create reasons for people to want to come into the office, whether it's just for a let's work together session, whether it's for a team meeting or for an event or activity that's happening based on what we know that that employee is interested in. And then they use the space booking feature if that's required, because there are companies like one potential customer we're talking to right now. They're only 50 people, but they're building an office with only 20 desks. So they still need that sort of desk management solution. So they use all the three core components of what we've built, even for a very small team. And again, we're using that ourselves in the same way. And it works really well because at the end of the day, even in our very small team, I wouldn't know if I'm not in the office, who is in the office and who is really engaging and who is attending a lot of events and who is driving connections within the company. I would have no idea. So being able to log in, even for a small team to see that data, to me is very valuable. Again, I'm super biased, but all of this should work for smaller teams. And again, other vendors, other solutions, we just went to Microsoft yesterday. They're working really hard on building out, for example, something like Microsoft Viva, which is an employee experience platform. Again, there are many stars, many solutions out there. A lot of them also work for smaller teams. Okay, and then the last two, and then I think we're at time. So the first one is from Kim Ngan, and she is asking that in an organization, and yes, Sarah, the slides will be available. I know we're in the same building, so I can even walk over and give you the slides. So Kim Ngan is asking, in an organization, there are positions that can work remotely, but some need to perform in the office. And how do you then arrange hybrid working while ensuring fairness? Okay, I love this question for two reasons. Number one, because we went through this ourselves. And number two, because fairness is that key principle, right? When we talk about just the basics of good HR, the basics of good management, we need to make sure we treat people equally. If we don't treat people equally, if we don't treat people fairly, then we will again have our inbox full of complaints. Why is that person making more money? Why can that person spend more days at home, et cetera, et cetera? So I think, again, the core principle needs to be that we start with listening to our employees, right? We listen to our employees and we just hear from them. Are you able to do part of your work from home? Would you like to do part of your work from home? What would your ideal schedule look like? There's a couple of good sort of quizzes and templates you can use from that. I'm happy to share. But basically, we can have that conversation, and that can be the first data that we then use to create our hybrid policy or our hybrid guideline, so we have a good starting point. And out of that could come, for example, that there are certain people who simply cannot do their work from home. For example, ironically, while they work a lot in hybrid work, the workplace experience manager or the office manager typically needs to be in the office, right? A receptionist typically needs to be in the office. If you go to a hotel, maybe 80% of the staff actually would never be able to work hybrid. So that's just the reality, right? And I think that then the second question is basically, well, you basically acknowledge that there is no part of your scope that you could do from home. So, is this really the right, if you are looking for a hybrid schedule, is this really the right role for you? Would you like to be, instead of like a customer facing or a reception or a workplace experience management role, would you rather be in more of like a back office role where you have that ability? Right. So we have to make sure that the role and everything that comes with it, for example, is it a role that's required to be on site, that it fits with the person? And the second one is also to challenge ourselves a little bit as HR and as company owners, as leaders. Is there really no way to let even a front desk person work from home some days? That's actually what we end up doing. We actually said, yeah, why not create a schedule where there is one person kind of like rotating between different locations, so that even that person can spend one day from home and do the kind of tasks that you don't need to be in the office for, right? Because typically everyone still has, even a receptionist, even a workplace manager will have admin work to do. So why not give them 1 day or half a day, or in our case, we decided 2 half days that can be planned based on their own requirements every week, and give it to them. So we can also challenge ourselves a little bit. And then the very final one will be from Tan Tao, and she asks how to address the need of staff having the need of their own working station or desk when we practice hot desk and hybrid working. So again, amazing question. It really comes down to hybrid is, first of all, a huge spectrum, right? So not everyone who does hybrid therefore needs to let go of the dedicated desks or assigned desks. You could do hybrid and say, you know, we have a role here, let's say the finance role. That person in mutual alignment only wants to work 1 day from home. There's no need to clear their desk and tell them they cannot have stuff on their desk, right? Because 4 out of 5 days they're going to be sitting there. So why not just give them their desk? But then there may also be people who are only coming into the office 2 days a week. And then I think the conversation with that employee would be, very frankly, it's kind of either or. Either you have this amazing flexible schedule where you only have to come to the office 2 days per week. With that comes the requirement to use a hot desk to make sure that you don't claim a desk and that desk is sitting unoccupied 3 working days, which means including weekend 5 days out of 7, that desk is sitting empty, right? Or you say, I'm mostly going to be in the office. And certain companies actually have done this where they say, we leave it to the employee to choose their own adventure, to choose their own hybrid model. So for example, in the leadership roundtable, the hybrid working roundtable we did in Singapore last month, we spoke to Renee Kidda, who is the head of people global for GoTo Financial, the company behind Gojek. And so that's what they did. They basically say at the beginning of every, I think they do it every 6 months, you can choose your profile. You can choose mostly from home, mostly in the office, or hybrid. And only mostly from office gives you an assigned desk. So using that, you then have a great conversation with the employee and say, look, this comes with this and this comes with this, your choice. So that's a way to avoid that. Okay, thanks so much for all the questions. I think we're at time and I'll hand it back to Charlotte.
Well, thank you so much. All great questions, and hopefully Daan has helped you, answering some of the burning questions that have been going around regarding hybrid work. I think the overall theme is that, it's been proven that work doesn't have to be done in the office, and hybrid work is really here to stay. It is a challenging topic, and companies have to constantly testing and trying things out. And then by listening to the employees, then you can really optimize and then create guidelines or policy that works for your company, because one solution might be helpful for one company, but might not work for you. So it's a lot of trials and errors, but hopefully everyone will embrace this journey of hybrid work. And FlexOS is here to help. So if you have any questions, feel free to shoot them our ways, and we will definitely make sure to send over the hybrid work starter kit that Daan has mentioned earlier in the PowerPoint, talking about the 12 key challenges that usually come up in the topic of hybrid work. And thank you everyone for joining us on this webinar, and looking forward to see you guys again in our upcoming events. Thank you.